restoring progress and prosperity to American families. It's about showing the American and the American people that democracy still works in America, notwithstanding all the talk of its demise. Not just for the privileged few, but for all of us.
We're going to unpack this all with Cornelia Meyer in Bern, Switzerland. She's the chairperson and CEO of Meyer Resources. Cornelia, welcome to the News Hour. It's good to speak to you. The US and the UK, two of the world's biggest economies struggling with inflation and the rising cost of living, the central banks there have taken action. Is it too little, too late, though?
It may be. Thank you for having me. It is a little bit too little, too late, especially in the UK, because Europe is different from Europe is very different from the US in the sense that the energy crunch is bigger because gas is a real issue because of the war in the Ukraine. What you've seen in the US is that inflation, while still high, it has come down in the month of July compared to the month of June. So it's a downward trajectory. But what we will see the only way central banks can deal with this is to do quantitative tightening, taking money out of the economy and also raising interest rates, which obviously is hard for house owners. It makes it more difficult to invest. So that always has a counter-cyclical effect on growth.
Well, we know situations like these are always going to affect lower income individuals and households who were already struggling post the COVID-19 pandemic. But can it now be argued that even middle and higher income earners are being hit hard? They're feeling the pinch because it's also predicted that things are going to get worse before they actually get better.
Yes, especially in the UK, they will get worse. In the US, people think that inflation will come down during the second half. But yes, it's middle-income families, especially homeowners, because when interest rates go up, mortgage rates go up. And if you own middle-income, people tend to own their own homes in places like the US or the UK. So when those interest rates, as mortgage rates go up, that can become very tight if people have been, not very conservative in terms of what sort of house they wanted to afford and how much debt they wanted to take on.
Cornelia, what are your thoughts then on Joe Biden's Inflation Reduction Act that's just been passed? Is it going to reduce inflation even more? And is it a good move long term for the United States?
Well, I think it's a good move in the sense that it looks at the whole climate issue. It will take out about 4 million tons of CO2. It's probably also good to address the healthcare issues that you have in the US with insufficient healthcare coverage of the general population. So in that sense, it is good. But if you want to combat inflation, spending is never a good idea. So it's a package that will spend money where it needs to be spent, but that doesn't counter inflation. And obviously it will tax corporations, which you can argue may be the right track, but it doesn't really encourage those corporations to invest. So yes, it does all the right things in terms of looking how to steer the economy into the 21st century, but I wouldn't call it an Inflation Reduction Act.
Well, when we look at the UK, this is obviously an economic crisis for them that they're going through, but politically, it's also a change in leadership. How is this now going to impact the leadership race for who becomes the next Prime Minister of the country?
Well, both of them will have to address this cost of living crisis, and it really is a cost of living crisis. Now, Liz Truss says she wants to reduce taxes, which could, affect middle, every income bracket, but when you look at the deficit, that's sort of very difficult to do when you have such a high deficit compared to the GDP of the country. So it's very difficult for either of them. Look, whoever becomes the next prime minister will have to tackle between the inflation, the cost of living crisis, and the energy crisis, crisis, and then also rising interest rates. So neither of the two will have an easy time when whoever it is finally assumes the leadership of the party, and with that, the prime ministership.
Cornelia Meyer, great to speak to you and get your insight on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed.